Dr. Amore is with the University of Hawaii State at Manoa. She is with the Tropical Plant and Soil Science Department, and her topic today is increasing Hawaii's agricultural production.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me and having the opportunity to share with you what we see as a lot of opportunity for the Hawaii floriculture industry. Since we last met in October last year, a number of opportunities have arisen for the researchers. So I will be talking about the opportunities that help us face the challenges that we all have. So the first opportunity is the HDOA New Germplasm Grant, and the second one is a GIA that was awarded to HFNA. So these are the two opportunities that we really want to capitalize on and hopefully provide the impetus to have the industry move even further. As an aside, while we were waiting in the gate this morning, Sharon alerted me about the new Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Product Summary. And the good news is the floriculture and nursery products value is the highest since 2009. Yay. Give yourselves a hand. We all worked for this. So it went up from 67 million to 74.5 million, which is quite an accomplishment.
In 1 year?
In 1 year, and considering all the challenges we've faced previous to that. So even more opportunities to seize, and hopefully we really feel upbeat about this good news, and we'll see increasing sales and increasing value of our industry as we all work together. So the first opportunity I want to share with you is the New Germplasm 17 project. The RFP came out in November, so barely a month after we met. And this was a project that was supposed to coordinate with commodity organizations working primarily on potted plants, cut flowers, herbs, vegetables, and tropical fruits, with researchers to look at importation, evaluation, and distribution of new germplasm. This is because one of the bottlenecks that has been consistently identified is the lack of new germplasm. We need new germplasm to remain competitive. If we don't have anything new, what else do we have to sell, right? So we're looking at new germplasm, and what do we do to have new germplasm? We also want to put in new germplasm so that we can replace high-risk flowers and produce brought into the state. Basically, we're looking at import replacement. So when we talk about high-risk flowers and produce, we're thinking of the additional hangers-on or little critters that stick to the flowers and produce that become invasive and cause even more problems to our production in the state. So the first task of let me backtrack. So this was awarded in, the RFP came out in November. The deadline to submit it was in December. And by May, we heard the good news that we had received the grant. And we have a team from CTAR working on this particular grant to address these following issues. So in our grant proposal, which was eventually approved and funded, we have a two-pronged approach. The first is to generate research for new germplasm. So we're looking at germplasm research and development so we can identify and evaluate new germplasm. As I mentioned earlier, this grant encompasses both food crops and floriculture and nursery crops. So this was quite a feat, I would say, to put together a grant of this magnitude. I'll talk about the food crops first because we'll not devote much time there afterwards. But I would like to acknowledge our co-PIs. For bananas, we had Richard Mansart, Janice Uchida, and Mike Meltzer. Citrus, we have Mike Meltzer as the heading that team. and sweet potato and taro with Susan Miyasaka and Mike Meltzer. You might see Mike Meltzer's name popping here a lot. And that's because he is in charge of getting clean materials as part of the National Clean Plant Network. So one of our goals is to have clean germplasm released to industry, be it the food crops or the floriculture and nursery crops. Now for the floriculture and nursery crops, we have an awesome team with Cynthia Nazario Leary, who's here finally in person and not on screen, doing cut flower and foliage in Maui. We have Orville Baldos, who will be presenting via Zoom shortly after. He's at the Lich conference, which is going concurrently. And I will be talking after the break on dendrobium orchids and anthuriums. Okay. Now, HFNA and CTAR have been in this partnership since 2012 to address biosecurity via import replacements. So, for instance, HFNA has put workshops for florists and the general public to buy local and use local as import replacements. Eric mentioned also the workshop that HFNA sponsored for the researchers, and we learned there were four of us, right? Yeah, 4 of us. We're getting our hands wet. We had hands-on experience working and learning that the design process is not as easy as it looks. They may look fabulous, but we were all thumbs, believe me, as we were trying to get our designs and trying to understand what types of floral products are needed. So we were accustomed to looking at floral products from the research standpoint, looking at it as it grows in the field, but not really considering its design aspect. So that immediately, after conversations with the designers, that kind of provided us another lens to view how we evaluate our products. And so another fruitful development from that partnership is now that we know the designers, we can easily send them photos. What do you think of this? Yes or no. Sometimes we think it's great, but they'll go, no, too much contrast and things like that. So having their viewpoint assists the researchers in focusing on what the needs are and trying to fill in the gaps. And also for us researchers to provide the growers that will provide product to the designers that the designers really want. So everybody wins in this situation because at least we won't have to worry about the impact of our work because we know that's what they want. So it's pretty much tailor, like I call it reading by design. That we meet their needs, we meet the growers' needs, everybody wins, and the designers will drive the demand for the product. So hopefully that goes on, that we can have a growth in our production. Because of these workshops, there has been an increased consumer demand for locally grown materials. And as I mentioned, then we have the demand as a driver for production. And as we are addressing import replacement, we have to keep in mind too that we are looking at producing disease-free planting materials as well as materials that will be resistant, if not tolerant, to the pests and diseases that are challenges to production. Okay. The second aspect of the new germplasm grant is to expand the tissue culture facility at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and over here in Hilo at the Komohana Research and Extension Center. This tissue culture facility was actually a product of the CTAR strategic plan, which we had worked on prior to the new germplasm project. So we were looking basically at means to increase revenue and to streamline the release of new germplasm because we identified new germplasm as a bottleneck. So with the CTAR strategic plan, we thought, okay, we have a facility. If multiplication of adequate mother mother flask or starting materials is a bottleneck, then we have to step up in production. And so this will facilitate distribution to the growers, having a much larger pool or greater numbers of starting material. So we thought about that during the strategic plan. However, funding was an issue. So we had great thoughts. We thought we were going to do this, and then no funding. So we thought with the new germplasm grant coming into play, this would be a unique opportunity for us to do a test or a pilot study and see if we can really work on it. So the idea is to do multiplication of materials or the mother materials in Manoa and eventually going over to the Komohana where the lab will be. So this one is still, we haven't really fleshed out the details, but that's basically the blueprint. And we will be looking at that shortly after. And with the release of funds, we're looking into acquisition of an autoclave first and foremost. Okay, so with that, with this two-pronged approach, there is a role for the commodity groups and the associations. And what is the role of the commodity groups? First, they have to, we will work together to address propagation and distribution of new germplasm with researchers. The germplasm release policy has been hashed and rehashed many times. So we're trying to look for a model that will be acceptable to all parties. And so it's a win-win for everybody. Secondly, we also expect the commodity associations to provide feedback during the evaluation process. Are the materials we're producing satisfactory? Is it something you like, and you don't think you can sell it, or that? And once we identify the new germplasm, we expect the commodity associations to provide the tissue culture lab with orders for plant propagules. So we have to have this constant system going on. So we'll provide the materials, industry will tell us what to do, how much, because if there's no orders, nothing moves. So we have to keep this communication, lines of communication open, so we can get this project to be working, and then we can get our germplasm out. Okay. I briefly mentioned earlier about disease indexing. This is really important because we don't know what diseases may be harbored in some plants. For instance, in the case of banana or even some new crops, I think Orville might be mentioning about this later, there might be some viruses that we're not even aware of. So with Mike Meltzer, running molecular diagnostics will help us identify if it's truly clean materials before we release it. Because we don't want to have Trojan horses that might harbor something, and then when we multiply it, we will be unwittingly multiplying even the pest or disease. So that's why we're looking at providing disease-free propagules for growers. Okay, switching gears now. So that was opportunity number one that we were able to avail of. The second opportunity, again, happened early this year, where we had a meeting with HFNA to discuss a GIA to address the germplasm issue also. I think Dr. Cha also is part of this GIA, and he will be talking about his section. But for this part, I will be focusing on the breeding portion of the GIA, so that we are able to deliver new germplasm. Okay. The first objective is to facilitate the release of at least 2 cultivars of floriculture products that were being cultivated for distribution for field planting. One of the issues raised by our cooperators is that 200 microplants is not enough. Grayson's smiling. We hear you. 200 microplants is not enough to do a good read on production. It's not a good, you don't get enough materials to run an acceptable market test. Because 200 plants, you won't get them maturing at the same time. As Grayson was telling us, it's hard to even get a box out. So we hear you. So now we're thinking about selecting cultivars that show promise to ramp up the selection to up to 1,000 plantlets per cooperator. And that is to address production differences when you do small scale versus large scale. In January 2016, we visited Anthura, which is the world's largest breeder of anthuriums. And they also mentioned to us that they do a small scale test and a large scale test, because depending on some varieties, some behave nicely in small scale, 200, small plots. But when they ramp it up, they encounter some difficulties. They didn't explain why, but it happens. And it's not for everything, though. So with that in mind, we thought, okay, these are the two varieties that we look promising in the field, namely UH2071, which is, doesn't show too much color, but this one will show you it's a nice dark red color. It's a masculine red, as we have been describing it. Only problem is sometimes it's anthracnose susceptible. We have problems with that, but otherwise it's a different color that will fulfill a niche in the red scheme of colors. This is UH2555. It's a unique, we call it raspberry lifesaver color, which is not present amongst commercial anthurium cultivars. So these are the two that we identified as something that might be of use for ramping up for market testing. The second objective was to propagate at least 3 cultivars with the best potential for new colors and physical characteristics in demand by consumers and designers. I was fortunate enough to attend the American Institute of Floral Design convention last July in Seattle. And there was a very warm reception for our products. A lot of the on-stage presentations used Hawaii products, and some of the designers that I got to meet and speak with were very impressed with the Hawaii products. And one of the trends that is now being promoted is what is called tropical nouveau. So it's using tropical flowers with temperate flowers, which used to be a no-no in floral design. It's like tropicals are tropicals, temperates are temperates. But now the trend is to make designs where you have tropical flowers and temperate flowers all together. So you can have like Alaskan peonies and proteas and dendrobiums and David Austin garden roses with scents, all in one design. So that is where the floral designers, the high-end floral designers are moving towards. And coupled with that is them doing advertising via social media, the use of Instagram, where you have 64,000 followers. So that's like instant marketing when you go through social media. And when people see this new trend and it gets shared, retweeted, what have you, you're having your own marketing scheme getting marketed by itself. So these were the 3 products that were showed really promise for design. So the first one is UH1991, which is a cross between Tropic Fire and Acropolis. It has its faults, but it's hard to get a good pink obake in the market with good production. One of the pink obakes in production is Tatsuta Pink Obake, but it's quite stingy when it comes to production. So we're looking at, it doesn't have to be the fairest of them all, because it has to play nicely with the other flowers. We used to think that the flowers we produce has to be the best, the nicest, like show judging, but we learned quickly that that's not the best trait. The best trait is how well do you mix with other flowers, so everybody wins in the situation. Okay, this is something similar to the first selection. This is UH2007. It's a sibling. It's also with Acropolis and Tropic Fire. It's much smaller than the first one, 1991. The third one is UH2282, which is a unusual color. Designers really, really like this because it matches well in the bridal schemes where you have this ivory color. It's not white. We found out they don't like white, but they want something like a blushy color, which was really different from what we had used. We used to think that it has to be the whitest white. Now they're saying, no, not whitest white. We want a little tinge so we can mix it. So they have to play well with other colors in the design. Okay. So what is our plan of work? With these three selections, we will name and release it to the industry association. We will also distribute tissue cultured plantlets for immediate small-scale planting, because if we want to take advantage of the market, we have to have already small-scale field plant. I mean, small-scale meaning we're not going to propagate 10,000. A much modest number, so that whatever's on the field will have the next planting going on. And in the meantime, we will also distribute mother flasks to cooperating laboratories so that we can get production up and going. Okay. The third objective is to release at least one existing cultivar or variety to expand in production. For instance, these are varieties that you might think of as the stepchild because they were released but not widely accepted. Well, times change, demands change. The anthurium on the left is Maui. It's a red obake that's highly productive, and but we haven't really had orders for this, so we're thinking of re-releasing it through the tissue labs. And the dendrobium on the right is an quote-unquote old variety. It's called Dendrobium Jacqueline Thomas Improved Uni-Y Blush. In 1991, when we released this, the demand was white as white can be. So there was not much demand for blush. Well, times change. Just like fashion changes, the demands for what products we have change also. So we were thinking, and the designers had mentioned too, that they want this blushy type that can play well with other colors. So we're going to make seed pods of this variety so that this can be put out for cropping. Okay. And lastly, our last objective is to provide results of this research in venues such as this. So we want to improve vase life, get pest and disease resistance, tolerance to shipping, Joanne, and to shorten the time from pollination to release. If we have all the parts moving together, we hope to get new varieties not once more frequently than having a life cycle of 14 years. So these are the aims of the two opportunities that we have. So with the goal of adding new germplasm to the floriculture industry, our challenge is a timely delivery of the plant materials to growers. So the tissue lab will hopefully do that. And also the need to increase production to meet the demands, market demands. With that, I'd like to end, because we do have lots of opportunities and we want to see the industry growing yearly. Modest gains is good, but larger gains are more than welcome. Thank you. Questions? Yes?
Is it known how many tissue culture labs are privately operated in the state, and are any of them adding to the base of plants?
We had a survey done. I can't remember the numbers, but there was a survey done as part of our strategic team. I think there's very few tissue labs left. Of course, cost has been the major issue. So there are not that many labs, either on any of the islands. There are a few. It's not to say there's none. There are tissue labs. Thank you.
Thank you.